Does the forgotten earth remember the prayers whispered into its dust? On the wooded slopes overlooking the Goryeo capital of Kaesong, where pines clung stubbornly to rocky outcrops, stood a shrine so weathered it seemed less built by human hands and more surrendered back to the wild. Here Ara, barely into her 20s, moved with a quiet purpose that belied the neglect surrounding her. Her simple hemp clothes bore the smudges of damp earth and crushed herbs. Her dark eyes, intense and unsettlingly perceptive to the villagers below, scanned the clearing, the small, decaying wooden structure, the clouded spring beside it, and the ancient, gnarled oak that dominated the space like an arthritic hand reaching for the sky. This was her inheritance, the fading echo of a shamanic line, overshadowed by the gilded temples and Confucian academies favoured by the court. She knelt before the stone altar, chipped and stained by seasons of indifference. In her hands, she held a plain white ceramic bowl filled with water drawn painstakingly from the spring, its surface already filmed with an unnatural opacity. Her grandmother's teachings, fragmented memories whispered alongside the scent of mugwort smoke, guided her movements. A simple offering, a plea for balance, a duty performed more out of stubborn loyalty than fervent faith. As she murmured the old words, a language that felt both foreign and intimately familiar on her tongue, a sudden biting wind whipped through the clearing, stirring only the dead leaves at her feet. The living canopy remained unnaturally still. The water in the bowl trembled not from her hand, but from a vibration deep within the earth. A chill, profound and ancient, seeped into her bones, carrying with it a faint, dry scent like decaying wood and desperate hunger. The offering felt rejected. A knot of unease tightened in Ara's stomach, a feeling that had been growing stronger with each passing moon, like roots slowly cracking stone. The shrine wasn't just neglected, it felt sick, its spirit restless and starved. The rejection lingered, a sour taste in the air. Ara rose, the crescent moon birthmark on her wrist seeming to pulse faintly beneath her sleeve. This wasn't the quiet melancholy of abandonment she had grown accustomed to. This was something active, something demanding. She spent the following days delving deeper into the tattered scrolls and fragmented memories her grandmother had left behind. She gathered specific herbs known for cleansing, mugwort, pine needles, peach branches, burning them until fragrant smoke curled around the silent oak. She recited the chants for placation, her voice clear but hesitant, unsure if she was soothing a troubled spirit or merely irritating a wound. The shrine responded not with peace, but with petulance. The wind grew sharper, carrying whispers that snagged at the edge of hearing, meaningless yet filled with a grasping need. Thorns, thick and unnaturally sharp, crept from the edges of the clearing, snaking towards the path. The air grew colder, even under the midday sun, and Ara felt a persistent lethargy, a subtle draining of her own vitality after each ritual attempt. The spirit wasn't being cleansed. It was being provoked. Its hunger, she sensed, was not for smoke or chant, but for something far more fundamental. One morning she found the spring completely choked. Overnight, thick, slimy algae had bloomed, turning the water into a foul-smelling soup. Dead insects floated on the surface. Nearby, where wildflowers had struggled to bloom, the earth was cracked and barren, as if life itself had been sucked away. A cluster of young saplings near the ancient oak stood withered and grey, their leaves crumbling like ash at her touch. The corruption was accelerating, spreading outwards from the oak, the heart of the shrine. That night, sleep offered no respite. Ara dreamt not of calming forests, but of a vast shadowy form made of splintered wood and decaying leaves, its core hollow, radiating an immense aching void. It reached for her, not with malice, but with the desperate, indiscriminate hunger of starvation. She woke gasping, the phantom sensation of roots closing around her limbs, her own energy feeling thin and frayed. The Mokryong, the spirit of this grove, wasn't just restless, it was dying, and in its desperation it was beginning to feed on the life around it, including hers. Simple offerings and grandmother's rituals were like trying to fill a drought-cracked riverbed with a single cup of water. She needed knowledge, guidance beyond the fading whispers of her lineage. Current part characters, 1602. Total characters, 532. Swallowing her pride and the ingrained wariness between the old ways and the new, Ara descended the mountain path towards the small Buddhist temple nestled halfway down the slope. Its polished wood and serene bells felt a world away from the raw, untamed energy of her shrine. Monk Hyosung, the temple's head, was known for his quiet wisdom and observant eyes. He received her with polite reserve, his gaze lingering on the smudge of earth on her cheek and the wildness that clung to her like the scent of pine. Ara explained her plight, not in terms of shamanistic spirits, but of a profound imbalance, a sickness in the land centered around the old shrine grove. She spoke of the corrupted spring, the withered plants, the draining energy. Hyosung listened patiently, his fingers steepled, his face calm but thoughtful. He didn't dismiss her out of hand, as she had feared. Instead, he retreated into the temple's small library, returning later with an old bound manuscript. "This temple has stood for many generations," he said, his voice gentle. "Our records speak of the time before, when the mountain spirits, the Sanshin, and the guardians of groves like yours were deeply revered." He pointed to a faded passage. "This speaks of the great oak shrine, known for its vibrant spring, a source of vitality for the surrounding land. It was tended by a line of women, your ancestors, perhaps." He confirmed the spirit was likely ancient, powerful, intrinsically tied to the health of the grove. Such entities thrive on reverence, on the flow of life energy. Gi, neglect, or worse, desecration can starve them. He paused, his gaze meeting hers with newfound gravity. "There are tales, dismissed now as folklore, of logging concessions granted centuries ago near that ridge. Perhaps the roots were damaged, the sacred ground disturbed," he sighed. "A spirit starved for so long becomes corrupted. Its hunger turns desperate, indiscriminate. It seeks not just reverence, but raw life force to mend itself." He admitted Buddhist rites of exorcism, designed for troubled human ghosts or lesser demons, might be ineffective, even dangerous against such an elemental force. "Direct confrontation is perilous, young woman. It could consume you entirely." He offered no easy solution, only confirmation of the danger and the depth of the spirit's need. Ara returned to the shrine under a sky heavy with unshed rain. Hyosung's words echoed in her mind, starved for Gai, raw life force. The spirit's desperate hunger, its aching void she'd felt in the dream, it resonated with a painful frequency within her own solitude. She was the last of her line, clinging to a forgotten tradition, isolated by the very connection that defined her. The Mokryong, too, was isolated, forgotten, its sacred duty left untended. Perhaps their loneliness was a mirror. She sat before the murky spring, watching a struggling water beetle trapped in the algae. Conventional methods had failed. Appeasement through offerings was insufficient. Exorcism was likely impossible and potentially catastrophic. What was left? Hyosung's words, raw life force, circled back. The energy the Mokryong craved wasn't just the ambient vitality of the forest, it was now draining. It was the focused, intentional flow of Gi that rituals and reverence once provided. The energy she felt stirring within herself when she truly connected with the natural world, the energy passed down her lineage, could that be offered? Not as a sacrifice to be consumed, but as a conduit. A deliberate, controlled channeling of her own life force directly into the spirit's core, meeting its desperate hunger not with fear or resistance, but with an overwhelming wave of vitality, intending not to destroy or banish, but to heal, to restore the broken connection. It was an act of profound intimacy, terrifying in its implications. To open oneself so completely to such a corrupted, powerful entity, the risk of being overwhelmed, drained, extinguished, was immense. Yet, what other path remained? To abandon the shrine was unthinkable. It was her legacy, her connection to her ancestors, to herself. To let the Mokryong continue its decay meant the eventual death of the grove and a festering spiritual wound on the mountainside. A tremor ran through her, not of fear, but of terrifying resolve. She would face the spirit, not as an exorcist, but as a healer, using the very essence of her being as the medicine. She would feed the Mokryong, not with rice or chance, but with herself. Current part characters, 255 and 71. Total characters, 1,541. The preparation took 3 days. Ara fasted, purifying her body and mind. She bathed in the cold mountain stream below the corrupted spring, letting the clean water wash away lingering fear. She spent hours in meditation, not reciting chants, but focusing inward, gathering her own Gi, feeling its warmth pool within her core. a vibrant counterpoint to the shrine's chilling aura. She traced the crescent moon birthmark on her wrist, a symbol her grandmother had said marked their line, feeling a subtle energy hum beneath the skin. She gathered not herbs for burning, but smooth stones from the stream, arranging them in a grounding circle around the base of the ancient oak. She cleaned the small shrine structure as best she could, sweeping away debris, patching a hole in the roof with woven branches. It was an act of respect, of preparing a space not for battle, but for transformation. The full moon rose, bathing the mountainside in ethereal silver light, a time when the veil between worlds thinned. The air in the clearing was thick, heavy with anticipation. The unsettling whispers intensified, swirling around her like dry leaves caught in a vortex. The ground beneath her feet seemed to thrum with a low, groaning vibration. Ara took her place within the circle of stones, facing the gnarled trunk of the great oak, the epicenter of the Mokryong's presence. She closed her eyes, took a deep centering breath, and reached out not with her hands, but with her spirit. The Mokryong responded instantly. The wind shrieked, tearing at her clothes. Shadows under the oak writhed and coalesced, drawing in strands of moonlight and darkness, forming a towering figure, vaguely humanoid but terrifyingly alien. It was a shifting mosaic of cracked bark, decaying leaves, grasping roots, and damp earth, bound together by tendrils of shadow. 2 points of light, like phosphorescent fungi deep within a rotting log, opened like eyes, fixing on her with an intensity that radiated pure, agonizing hunger. Roots erupted from the ground around her, thick and questing, scraping against the protective circle of stones. The air crackled with raw, unstable power. Fear, cold and primal, threatened to paralyze Ara, but she held on to her resolve, anchoring herself to the image of the shrine restored, the spring running clear. Instead of shrinking back, instead of raising barriers, she did the unthinkable. She opened herself. Pushing past the terror, she consciously lowered her inner shields, focusing the pool of warm ja within her. She visualized it as liquid light, vibrant and potent, the essence of her life force, her connection to the living world. Then, with a silent exertion of will, she projected it outwards, a shimmering stream flowing from her core, her hands, the glowing birthmark on her wrist, directly towards the monstrous form. The impact was staggering. The Mokryong recoiled as if struck, letting out a soundless scream that echoed in Ara's mind, a cacophony of ancient pain, loneliness, and outrage. Then its hunger overwhelmed its shock. It surged forward, not physically, but spiritually, attempting to engulf the stream of energy, to drain her dry in a single desperate gulp. Ara felt a terrifying pull, a dizziness as her own vitality was drawn upon. The world warped around her, the clearing filled with a storm of raw energy, swirling leaves of light and shadow, the roar of wind mingling with the creak of tormented wood. Flashes of the spirit's long existence flooded her mind. Centuries of silent guardianship, the feel of sunlight on healthy leaves, the murmur of clear water, the reverence of her ancestors. Then came the violation, the bite of axes, the tearing of roots, the slow starvation of neglect, the growing bitterness, the twisting of its nature into this desperate consuming hunger. She felt its pain as her own, but Ara held firm. This wasn't a surrender, it was a conscious offering, guided by intent. She didn't just pour out energy, she shaped it, infusing it with the intention of healing, of balance, of connection restored. Be whole, she thought, projecting the feeling with all her strength. Be balanced, you are not forgotten. It became a struggle not of force against force, but of focused life against chaotic hunger, of healing intent against ingrained despair. She felt the Mokryong resist, then falter, the raw consumption shifting into something more akin to desperate drinking. The intensity was immense. She felt herself weakening, the edges of her consciousness fraying. Yet she held her center, anchored by the stones beneath her feet and the unwavering image of the clear spring. Slowly, agonizingly, the torrent began to subside. The overwhelming pressure lessened. The chaotic swirl of energy started to cohere, the violent pull on Ara's G easing into a steadier flow. The monstrous form of the Mokryong flickered, its sharp edges softening, the terrifying fungal eyes dimming into a gentler glow. The sounds of torment faded, replaced by a deep, resonant hum, like the thrumming of the earth itself. Ara felt not just the spirit's hunger now, but its ancient weariness, and beneath that, a flicker of something akin to gratitude. The stream of energy flowing from her lessened, not because she was depleted, but because the spirit's desperate need was easing. The merging wasn't a consumption, but a communion, a shared breath after a long suffocation. With a final gentle pulse of energy infused with peace, Ara slowly withdrew her projection, carefully closing her spiritual channels. The world snapped back into focus. The wind died down to a soft sigh rustling through the leaves overhead, leaves that seemed somehow greener, fuller. The oppressive weight in the air lifted, replaced by a profound stillness, ancient and calm. Ara collapsed onto the cool earth within her circle of stones, utterly spent, her limbs trembling, her body drenched in sweat despite the night's chill. Yet, beneath the exhaustion, a deep sense of peace settled over her, a feeling of rightness. She looked towards the great oak. The shadowy, monstrous form was gone. Instead, a faint, silvery light pulsed gently within the gnarled trunk, serene and watchful. The air smelled clean, of damp earth, pine and ozone. She crawled to the spring. Though still murky from the disturbance, the foul smell was gone, and she could see, beneath the surface, the slow swirl of clearing water. The Mokryong was still present, its energy now woven into the fabric of the grove, not as a wound, but as a guardian spirit settling back into its ancient role, tamed, healed, restored. The hunger was satiated, not just by the influx of Ji, but by the recognition, the connection, the fulfillment of its purpose through her intervention. It was bound now, not by force, but by a renewed pact between spirit and keeper. Dawn broke, painting the sky in soft hues of rose and gold. The first rays of sunlight filtered through the canopy, dappling the clearing. Where the withered saplings had stood, tiny green shoots pushed through the damp earth. Ara, though weak, felt a quiet strength returning, a validation that resonated deeper than any societal approval. Her path, unorthodox and solitary, was true. Later that day, Monk Hyesong made his way up the path, drawn perhaps by curiosity or a sensed shift in the mountain's energy. He stopped at the edge of the clearing, his usually calm face etched with quiet awe. He didn't ask what had happened. The evidence was in the air, in the light, in the palpable peace that emanated from the ancient oak and the slowly clearing spring. He simply looked at Ara, sitting peacefully near the tree's base, and gave a slow, respectful bow. "The mountain breathes easier today," was all he said, a profound acknowledgement passing between the old ways and the new. In the weeks and months that followed, Ara dedicated herself to the shrine's true restoration. The work was slow, painstaking. She cleared the overgrown paths, mended the small structure with careful hands, and regularly tended the spring, which now flowed clear and sweet. She brought offerings not out of fear or rote duty, but as gestures of respect and connection, polished river stones, wildflowers, simple bowls of rice. The Mokryong offered no dramatic manifestations, only a constant, grounding presence, a sense of watchful guardianship. The grove seemed to awaken around her. The trees stood taller, the undergrowth was lush and healthy, and birdsong filled the air. Her own energy returned, stronger and more centered than before. The villagers, noticing the change in the shrine's atmosphere from a distance, the clearer air, the returning birds, kept their distance, but their wary whispers held a new note of grudging respect, perhaps even fear. They spoke of the wild shaman girl who had calmed the angry mountain spirit. Occasionally, someone in need of potent herbs only found deep in the woods, or seeking a traditional remedy the temple monks couldn't provide, would hesitantly make their way to her shrine. Ara offered her help quietly, knowledgeably, making no demands, her connection to the spirit granting her deeper insights into the natural world's healing properties. She remained an outsider, but no longer a powerless one. She had faced the consuming void, the starved heart of the forgotten, and had met it not with banishment, but with the potent, life-affirming energy of her own spirit. She had learned that true power wasn't about dominance or control, but about balance, connection, and the courage to offer oneself to heal a broken world, starting with one neglected shrine on a Korean mountainside near Kaesong, under the watchful gaze of a restored ancient spirit. Her solitude was no longer a burden, but a space filled with quiet purpose and the deep, thrumming peace of belonging. The crescent moon on her wrist felt like a quiet promise, a mark of her lineage, yes, but also of the unique strength she had found within herself. Current part characters: 2,573, total characters, 262. Life settled into a rhythm dictated by seasons and the quiet needs of the shrine. Ara rose with the sun, her first act always a greeting to the ancient oak, a silent acknowledgement of the spirit within. She felt its presence as a steady warmth now, a deep hum beneath the surface of the earth, a guardian reawakened. The spring water remained pure, and villagers sometimes left small, anonymous offerings of grain or cloth at the edge of the clearing, tentative gestures of respect, or perhaps appeasement. Monk Hyosung visited occasionally, not to preach, but to sit in quiet contemplation, sharing tea brewed with herbs, Ara gathered. Their conversations were sparse but meaningful, touching on the flow of Ji, the turning of seasons, the subtle balance between the seen and unseen worlds. He learned from her intuitive understanding of the mountain, and she gained perspective from his long study of spiritual discipline. A mutual respect bridged the gap between their traditions. Ara's healing skills grew. People learned that the remedies she offered, drawn from the revitalized grove, held a particular potency. A mother brought her feverish child. Ara prepared a poultice of crushed leaves gathered near the oak, murmuring soothing words that seemed directed as much to the spirit as to the child. The fever broke by morning. An old farmer, his joints seized by crippling arthritis, found relief in an infusion made from bark shavings given freely by the ancient tree, offered after Ara communed with the Mokryong. She never asked for payment beyond what people could freely offer, a bundle of firewood, a measure of rice, acknowledgement of the spirit's generosity. Her reputation shifted from wild shaman girl to mountain healer, a figure regarded with a mixture of awe and caution. She was still other, still separate, but now recognized for her unique connection and power. Current part characters 2120, total characters 2477 and 22. One late autumn, a prolonged drought settled over the region. Streams trickled, fields cracked, and even the temple's well ran low. Fear began to grip the villages below. Prayers at the temple seemed to go unanswered. Eyes turned towards the mountain, towards Ara's shrine, where the spring miraculously still flowed steadily, though diminished. A delegation of elders led by a reluctant monk Hyosung made the journey up the path. They found Ara not performing elaborate rituals, but sitting quietly beneath the oak, her hand resting on its bark. "Healer," the eldest villager began, his voice rough with worry, "the land thirsts. The heavens withhold their blessing. The temple's prayers are not enough." Ara looked at them, her dark eyes reflecting the grey sky. She felt the distress of the land mirrored in the quiet hum of the Mokryong. The spirit was balanced, but the wider world was not. "The spirit here guards its own domain," Ara said softly. "Its vitality is restored, but the imbalance lies beyond this grove. Rain is a gift of the heavens, not commanded by earthbound spirits alone." Hyosung nodded gravely. "Yet," he added, looking at Ara, "harmony here might invite harmony beyond. Perhaps a plea offered with a united heart?" Ara considered this. It wasn't about commanding the weather, but about aligning the restored energy of the shrine with the needs of the land, a focused projection of hope and balance. She agreed. That evening, as the sun bled orange behind the dry hills, Ara stood before the shrine, flanked by Hyosung and the village elders. No elaborate ceremony, just a shared focus, a pooling of earnest desire. Ara placed her hands on the oak, feeling the steady pulse of the Mokryong beneath the bark. She didn't channel her own Ji outwards this time, but acted as a bridge, connecting the villagers' heartfelt pleas, Hyosung's focused prayers, and the deep, resonant energy of the restored spirit, projecting their collective hope towards the indifferent sky. For 2 days, nothing changed. Doubt flickered among the villagers. But on the third morning, clouds gathered, thick and grey, smelling deeply of moisture. Rain began to fall. Not a deluge, but a soft, soaking rain that sank deep into the parched earth. It rained steadily for a day and a night, filling the streams, softening the fields. A collective sigh of relief rose from the valley. No one claimed Ara or the Mokryong had made it rain. But the connection was undeniable. The restoration of balance in the small, neglected shrine had resonated outwards, creating a focal point for collective hope that perhaps tipped the scales. Ara's place within the community, though still unique, solidified. She was the keeper of the sacred grove, the woman who spoke not just with herbs and roots, but with the ancient spirit of the mountain itself. Her power wasn't feared in the same way. It was respected, acknowledged as a vital part of the mountain's life, interwoven with their own. She continued her solitary life, but it was a solitude rich with connection, to the spirit, to the land, and in her own quiet way, to the people who shared the mountain with her. The shrine, once a symbol of decay and forgotten ways, became a quiet testament to the enduring power of balance, and the strength of a woman who dared to face the darkness, not with weapons, but with the unwavering light of her own vital essence. The crescent moon on her wrist seemed to shine a little brighter in the newly washed air, a silent mark of her journey from isolated outcast to respected healer, forever bound to the revitalized spirit of the Goryeo. Mountainside. The crescent moon on her wrist seemed to shine a little brighter in the newly washed air, a silent mark of her journey from isolated outcast to respected healer, forever bound to the revitalized spirit of the Goryeo years past. Ara aged, her youthful intensity softening into a quiet wisdom that settled deep in her eyes. Her movements remained lithe, attuned to the rhythms of the forest. The shrine thrived under her care, becoming a place of subtle power and profound peace. The ancient oak stood majestic, its leaves thick and vibrant, the silvery light within its trunk a constant, reassuring presence. The spring bubbled with life-giving clarity. Monk Hyesong